Good evening, good afternoon, good morning, or wherever you are on the planet. Good to have you here for another SE review show. We're doing something a little bit different today. Instead of reviewing a particular SE interview, we're actually going to be looking at clips from a variety of interviews and give our thoughts on just these kind of small snippets and sound bites. So before we get into the interviews, I'm going to go ahead and introduce ourselves. Hello, I'm Nate. I have a channel, Navigate with Nate. You might be familiar with me, you might not be, but I've been producing SE interview material for YouTube for about a year now, and having a lot of fun with it. And I'm hoping to continue to get better with it. I know that these sorts of SE review shows have been really instrumental in me getting better, and so we hope that it's really beneficial for you guys as well. If you guys would like to go ahead, I've got three other wonderful SE practitioners here on the stream. You guys want to go ahead and introduce yourselves? Reid, you are the next one over this way for me.
Hello, I'm Reid from Cordial Curiosity. I'm glad to be back. And always enjoy the SE review shows. How about you, Kevin?
Yeah, I'm Kevin. I have a channel that I haven't posted anything on yet called Rational Ruminations. I plan to start putting some stuff out. This will be my first review show.
Cool. Welcome.
Yeah. And Dali.
Hi there. I'm Dali. I've been doing SE since he trained me a couple of years back, and been doing a lot and taking breaks and coming back and having fun.
Losing weight, looking great, Dali.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And very prepared with both mics with the dead cats on them. Really good. All right, cool.
Awesome. All right. So Reid, do you want me to go ahead and introduce like our first kind of set of clips?
Sure.
Okay. So I picked out a few sets of clips. The first one that we're going to watch is from David of Sound Epistemology. David has a kind of different way of asking how much an interlocutor values truth. And it's a really interesting question. And I like the question. But sometimes the question isn't very well understood by his interlocutor. And so we're going to watch an example where there's a miscommunication that goes on for a little while. We don't have to watch it like all the way through. And Reid, I don't know how much you might have cut it down here and there. But I just want to kind of check out the question as David usually formulates it. And then we're going to see some alternative ways to phrase that question. So Reid,
let's see. On that same scale.
Yes.
What percentage of the conclusions that you hold about the world that we share do you think are accurate?
Can you repeat that?
0 to 100. What percentage of the conclusions that you hold about the world that we share do you think are accurate?
I feel like that one's kind of in a way like something that's constantly changing.
Currently.
In this very moment. And these are my assumptions about how I see the world, like how confident my perception is.
Conclusions, assumptions, beliefs, yeah.
So we're just to kind of make sure that I'm clear on this. We're saying how confident am I in my conclusions that I have made about the world?
No, we're looking for a number, right? The percentage of beliefs she thinks are accurate. So maybe it is a little confusing, but he does try to clarify.
Yeah. And this first part, I think, isn't so confusing. It's the follow-up question where they really start to misunderstand each other.
I'd say at least 70%. It's really odd because before I understood the question fully, or I felt like I understood it. My answer was going to be 30%, and so those are polar opposites, which is interesting. Do you want me to elaborate?
You can if you want. I can rephrase the question too if you think that helps.
Yeah, go ahead and rephrase it.
Let's say, and this is going to take a little bit of imagination, but let's say that all of your conclusions about the world that we share are written down and are put in this can. What percentage of the things that are written down in this can do you think are accurate?
And those are things that I put in the can?
This can contains all of your beliefs, all of your conclusions that you hold about the world that we share. What percent?
And I think that's a really good way to make it more tangible and understandable when he's talking about putting them in the can and that sort of thing. And I think using some sort of like physical analogy is useful, and I try to do that as well with the other question. So
yeah, the first time he asked the question, it seemed like she got confused as to the polarity of how many do you think are right or how many do you think are wrong, that 30-70 thing. So I get that she might have gotten the polarity of it wrong, and I think he's making it really clear with this second pass. You take all your beliefs, stick them in the can. Now they're randomly assorted, but they're your beliefs, and how accurate are this set if you were then sort out for the ones that are right and the ones that are wrong.
Yeah, I really like this rephrasing he's got here.
Percentage?
I'm going to say 70.
70?
Yeah.
Okay.
And the reason I say that is because I feel like there's obviously always room to know more. And I feel like I'm learning and growing constantly and shifting. But I would also like to feel like 70 feels like a nice number. Like it feels like a pretty good, confident number, but it leaves a good amount of room to continue to stretch and grow and learn new things.
You're open to being wrong about stuff that you believe. Sounds like.
I am.
Okay.
Indeed.
I wish I could be as humble as her. I don't think I could get down to 30% of my beliefs are wrong. I just don't believe I could believe that. But that's okay. I wish I could be that humble.
Now, Dali, think about this.
Yes.
To me, this is more, are you an optimist or a pessimist?
Okay.
Because there are things that I believe that I wish were wrong. Because if they are wrong, it's a better world for me.
Yeah. Yes. And that she comes back to that. Yeah, that's a big thing here in the next part of this.
Yeah. If I were to sort into the things I wish were not that I wish I were wrong about, 30% would be a really good number for me. Yeah, I can see that. Thank you.
Yeah, and it's not the set of all things anybody could know or believe and choose 70% of all of those. It's of the things that she does believe. She thinks 70% are accurate.
Yeah, she has confidence that 70% of her current assessments are accurate. Yeah.
But then what does believe mean? If you
I think she's just admitting that some stuff she believes could be wrong, but quite a bit of it, I suppose.
She may even hope that they're wrong.
Yeah.
I mean, there are things that I believe that I would hope are wrong.
Yeah. But there are probably things I believe that I'm wrong about. Like, I'm not omniscient.
I honestly believe that I'm wrong at least 5 to 10% of the time, and I don't have a clue as to which one, and that's independent of which ones I would want to be right or wrong.
Right.
And that's only just because how often I discover in the long run that I am wrong would lead me to think that I'm 5 to 10% of the time wrong now.
Yeah. This also relates to the idea that knowledge is a subset of belief. But David is asking what percentage of your beliefs do you think are accurate? Is that the same thing as saying what percentage of your beliefs do you think you could claim as knowledge?
Maybe, depending on the definition of knowledge. I suppose so, yeah.
Yeah. If we go with is it you have the belief and the true, the accurate, the true, but you don't have the justification. If the classic justify true belief definition, you'd have to add justification in there potentially as another question. So
Yeah.
anyway,
And I don't know if they're getting that much into it. I think they're more just talking about accuracy.
yeah, this is all
Like
set
whether
up to
it's true
get
or not.
to the next question of, well, how much would you prefer, which is later.
Right. Yeah.
Go ahead.
Do you own a car? Okay. How confident are you that it's parked where you left it?
I better be. Right? I'm like, oh, well, where are you, car? I'd say, again, it's that
Like around 98%?
98, yeah.
Okay.
It's that 98 again.
Okay. Do you hope that your conclusion that your car is still parked in the same spot is true?
Well, sure. Yes,
You want that to be true.
it is. Because that's stuff that feels good.
So that falls into the 33% of the conclusions that you hope are accurate.
Yes.
Okay. So you're out of 100, those are the kinds of conclusions that you hope you're accurate about. Is there something that you're comfortable sharing, a conclusion that you hold that you hope you were not accurate about?
That healthcare isn't all about money or big pharma benefiting off of the backs of people that have become ill based on the system that has been created through layers and layers of conditioning and agendas and marketing and brainwashing.
Maybe we can simplify that just for this kind of experiment that we're doing.
Love it.
Big pharma is based on money. Let's say that that's true.
Okay.
If it was not true, would you want to know that? Would you want your assessment about it to be accurate?
I do want my assessments to be accurate.
What percentage of your assessments do you want to be?
I want
would you
all.
prefer to be accurate?
There you go.
Yeah, and so this is a rephrasing of his earlier question, which we missed, and that I might have put the wrong timestamp actually. But so David will ask, what percentage of your beliefs do you hope or would you prefer to be accurate? And I think this is more of the question that he's actually trying to ask, the way he's phrasing it now. What percentage of your assessments about the world do you prefer to be accurate? Because the original preference, right, she was saying only 33%, because she's thinking of like 2/3 of her beliefs that are, in her eyes, terrible. Like they're uncomfortable truths, things that she wishes were different about the world. And so they'd kind of spent a big chunk of time kind of talking past each other. And so I think David was like kind of flabbergasted. You only want to be 1/3 right, which is just not the same question that she was answering.
Did David originally ask the preference question or just the matter of fact question?
I think he did, and I think he did, and we missed it. I might have put the wrong timestamp, and we might have missed the front. So he initially asks, what percentage of your beliefs do you prefer to be true? And she said like 33%. And so then they spend a long time kind of getting to this point, which is good that they spent the time to figure it out. But I know when I watched this for the first time, I was like, oh no, David, she's answering the question you asked, but it's not the question you meant. And it went on for a long time. And so I'm trying to look at ways that we could ask a similar question, because I think it's a really good question. It's a different way of like asking, how do you value truth and putting it on a scale. Mark has the question. He usually phrases it, on a scale from 1 to 7, how important is it for you to believe true things, right? And it's the same sort of question. David has his own formulation for it. I think we can improve it. So, yeah. Any other thoughts on that?
It is a good basic check if you get suspicious that they don't value truth, because then the rest of the conversation is almost pointless. that is almost the deepest or one of the deepest issues you can talk about. And if that's not covered, then yeah, the rest would be pointless. So it's good. But
Right.
it seems like David does this without even being suspicious that she doesn't value truth. He just kind of does it as like his general startup rapport questions almost, which is fine. You know.
And I think you can value truth, and you can say, like, it's true that 1 in 9 girls experience sexual abuse before the age of 18, right? And I can say that's a truth, but man, I don't want that to be true. You know what I mean? So there's contextual things that come into play here too, and then we always have to try to remember to throw context into a lot of these issues that aren't necessarily black and white.
It's like, how much of the things that I believe are true would I wish I were wrong about?
Yeah, I wish I were wrong about that.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Right?
as long as the number goes in the right direction.
So we have to make sure that the question is,
Right.
is clarified in such a way that we're getting the answer that we're looking for.
Yeah. And I think that this way that he phrased it right, what percentage of your assessments about, the world that we share, or I don't remember exactly how he phrased it. I think that's a better way of asking that as opposed to the prefer, right? How many of your beliefs would you prefer to be true, as opposed to how many of your assessments about the world would you prefer to be true? Even though it's asking the same kind of thing, it's more about how much would you like your assessments to be accurate, and then now she kind of understands the question now, whereas she wasn't before.
This is a really nuanced question that hinges on tiny commas and which terms. Wow, tough. There's so many ways to interpret the question with very slight differences.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's also a really challenging question because you're asking the person to evaluate how well they have done in evaluating and it's meta. It keeps pointing in on itself. Is your epistemology good?
If we could just ask that question.
But now that you've asked, I'm wondering, and
get to the chase, right?
Maybe.
All right. Good to go?
Yeah.
I want my perceptions to be 100% accurate. I want my perceptions to be insightful. I want them to be knowledgeable and informed. Yes. So
Okay.
maybe I was doing some ADHD thing, or missing the mark ultimately, because I think what's happening is, for me, kind of, I'm like, okay, there's certain things that I wish were not true, but that doesn't necessarily mean that obviously I don't want to be incorrect in my assessment of those things.
Okay.
So that makes more sense. So potentially I was reading the question wrong.
And I don't want you to feel like that's your fault. I put the burden of you understanding my questions on me. So I feel like if we took all of your conclusions and we went through them one by one,
Yes.
would you want your assessment about this to be accurate? I suspect that there would be more than 33% of that. And it sounds like you're saying that now too.
I agree. Yes.
Okay.
Yes. I'm on board now. Now I'm on board. Yes. I want my assessments of things to be accurate, because that means that I'm able to guide my decisions based on my accurate, well-informed, seeking and finding, researching, that kind of, like, that knowledge. I want that knowledge to be true.
Uh-huh.
Yes.
And at the same time, there are some things that you're convinced about that you would prefer it be different.
Yes. Exactly.
Okay. So where would that number be now that we've kind of
Figured it out.
Yeah.
So now that we know that we I suppose most people would want their knowledge to be 100% accurate, but I also know that that's also ridiculous. Nobody's knowledge is 100% accurate.
it's about your preference though.
Okay,
What you hope.
then I'll say I also like room for growth. So I don't really want to say 100% because that means there's no room for growth, or finding new things. So, I mean, I guess like maybe, I don't know, 85%. Like that seems like I mean, at least my 70%. Does that seem like some fucking crazy shit, dude? I'm like, well, I didn't know what I was signing up for. Shit, I'm getting in David's chair. Anybody else want to do this? Fun. Shit's fun. Out here in the hot seat. Yay! That's so funny.
She is a lot of fun. I loved watching her interview. But huge difference, from 33 to either 100 or 85, depending on where she decided to land. But,
and you can split that too almost into part of it's a normative claim. How much would she prefer to be wrong about, right? So we can split that into almost two separate questions.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah. So I was commenting live as I was watching it, and I was like, "Oh no, my gosh, it's falling apart!" And then I came back, I was like, "Oh, David, thank goodness you got on the same page." It was like stressing me out so much when I was watching it. So it was great that they got it figured out. But so yeah, I like that. I think that's a good way, an improvement, because I've seen him ask that question a lot before, right? What percentage of your beliefs would you prefer to be true? And I think something slightly different, right? What percentage of your assessments about the world would you prefer to be accurate? I think that cuts out a lot of the potential for miscommunication there. So,
yeah. And then you asked a similar question.
Yeah. So I didn't ask it exactly the same, but I actually asked it the first time the same way David does, probably just because like my brain has heard it enough that it just spat it out, And then I had kind of worked out this other way of asking it, and yeah, my sign fell down. So.
It happens.
All right.
Go ahead.
So, earlier I asked you, how confident are you? And you said 100%, right?
Yes, sir.
Similar question. Out of 100% or whatever, how important is it for you to believe true things?
This is very important.
Very important. Like, what percentage of your beliefs about reality would you prefer to be true?
I don't understand the question.
Let me try to rephrase it a little bit. That's a little tricky, yeah. So, like, if you thought about, if you think about the beliefs that you have as being kind of like your map of the world or the universe or reality, what percentage of your map, right, your belief map, do you want to be accurate to the way that the world really is?
I want all of it to be accurate.
Okay. All right. So like 100%, right?
But I think there's also like there's different avenues to get to, right? Like,
okay.
In my opinion, like everybody, I don't know. I'm open-minded when it comes to it in a little bit.
Nice.
Yeah. So it's good that he initially just said, "I don't understand the question." That gave me a good opportunity to try to rephrase it. But I found that was a pretty quick. Seemed like he understood the question pretty quickly that second time I asked it when I rephrased it. Mm-hmm. So there's a couple of different options for maybe how to ask a similar question. If you, like me, like that question that David asks, but maybe you're looking for like a slightly cleaner way to ask it. I don't know.
I think it's good. And we had a presentation a while ago, and we had this Ask for Value of Truth compilation. So there's more examples of it we can review real quick.
So, like, if this wasn't the case, which I'm not saying is not the case, but if it wasn't the case that a God exists, would you want to know that?
Sure. I can believe that it's there or not.
Do you care if your beliefs are accurate? Does it matter to you if it's true? If what this is doing is actually doing what you're thinking it's doing?
If this rock of comfort that may actually be giving you comfort from now to the end of your life, if the rock of comfort wasn't real, Would you want to be aware of it? Would you want to know it?
No, of course not.
Do you want to be a questioner, or do you want to be a person who sings the songs?
Now, watching that clip, there is a distinction between the specific claim you're talking about. If that was false, would you want to know? And just the valuation of truth itself. Like maybe that percentage that you don't care of your belief or true could be one of the claims you're talking about. So that is just slightly different. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's something where if you asked David's question or a version of David's questions first, and they say 100, and then you come back and you ask if this was not true, would you want to know it? Which I need to remember to do that some to ask that question, because that can point out possibly a discrepancy in their thinking.
Yeah, that's a cognitive dissonance setup. It's what that is. If they care 100% that if they want 100% of their beliefs to be accurate, but this one particular belief, they don't care about that, that's an inconsistency to think about. Yeah.
Yeah. And in my interview with Marcus, I think he kind of expressed something like, well, if it's not true, well, I've still lived a good life, and I, it didn't hurt anything or whatever. And so he'd expressed kind of like being okay with being wrong about that. But at the same time, like, I think that I could have pointed out that cognitive dissonance, and just one of those missed opportunities, you never ask all the questions you wish you would have when you're going back through rewatching and editing.
Cool. Nice.
Any other thoughts from Dali or Kevin?
At some level, the obvious answer to how many of the things you think are true do you think are true, at that simple level, it's obviously 100%, because it's sort of like the definition of think or believe or whatever. And then on another side, there's like this question of, if I were to phrase it in a different tense, maybe, do you change your mind often? When you change your mind, are you happy about getting that new information, or is it really disruptive to you? Does it matter what category the thing is in, whether you'd actually want to be disrupted? Are there things that you think are true that matter so little to your life that you'd rather not go through the hassle of learning that you were wrong if you were wrong? Now, I don't know if the answers to these questions are illuminating or helpful. I think that's the general point of the question. Or is there another thing? Because this one confuses me enough. I bet I'm not getting it. The goal, I mean.
Yeah, I think the goal is, it's partially the like Reid said earlier, right? If they don't, it's figuring out how much they value truth, essentially. And because if they don't really care about what's true, then it almost makes the rest of the conversation somewhat irrelevant.
Maybe. I do have friends that have directly told me that if they were wrong about a rather large category of things, that they wouldn't want to know, that they are much happier proceeding through their life without the disruption of having these little changes having been made, because look how well I've done so far with the strategies I have so far. I'd rather just move along with my current strategy.
Yeah.
Now, I don't like that, but I'm weird maybe, and much more interested in what's real than what I would prefer.
Yeah, I understand it in certain contexts with certain beliefs. Like, for example, like something that I often think about, if somebody struggles with depression a lot, but they've, gone through enough therapy and they now believe that life is worth living. Maybe their life is actually terrible, and maybe in some way, I don't know. We're just hypothetical here. Maybe it's really not that great, right? But they've got, this belief that whether it's true or not helps them in some way. I think in some situations, it's okay
can I pose
not to try to tear that down.
I want to try to make up a hypothetical where you'd like to not learn. So imagine there was a loved one very important in your life, maybe a relative, and maybe they've passed. And they were important in your life and they impacted you, and all, you're in whatever position you're in. about them. If I had information that may say they didn't love you and their actions that were positive toward you were for perverse reasons, would you want to learn that? Could that help you in any way in your current life? Would you like to not learn that information? It's the envelope. I can just throw it away because it doesn't really matter. And by the way, it could be wrong. Private investigators make mistakes all the time.
Yeah, it's a great question.
I'm asking you. Would that matter to you? Would you want me to throw that thing away and say, nah, it's probably not, or yeah, I need to know because I'm just too curious? The person's dead and gone.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I'd want to know that.
Good.
I would have to think about it a long time.
One way or the other. Now we've established a reason why this question can exist, in my mind.
Yeah.
Cool. Want to set up the next clip? Hey.
First, we got a few comments over here that I like. Gina says trying to put a numerical quality on it is hard. I think another scale like none, some, a lot, most, all would make more sense and help me understand the question better. Totally agreed.
Mm-hmm.
I've kind of gotten away from asking for people to put it on a scale recently, as far as like the confidence question. I still probably do it here and there, but recently when I'm asking somebody how confident they are, I just ask them how confident they are. A lot of times they'll give it to me on a scale. Like they'll give it me a number out of 10 or a number out of 100. I don't have to ask it, and I still get a number probably 80+% of the time. So I think allowing people to just phrase it how it makes the most sense to them is a good practice. Any other comments you guys want to highlight over here?
Gina's, I wouldn't want to know in that case. I'm with Gina. In that particular case that I laid out, I have enough reasons in my flowchart to say the information won't help me and could hurt me that I'd rather stay ignorant. And that is a really, really big deviation from how I usually handle things.
Yeah.
Oh, this is interesting. From 2-Day David. Speaking of the ethics behind SE and keeping those in mind, right? I view most deeply held beliefs, especially religious beliefs, similar to a spousal or parental relationship. You are trying to convince someone their parents don't love them or their wife is cheating. So David kind of sees evaluating those religious beliefs. If you're trying to deconvert somebody or something like that, that's your goal. That it's almost, he sees it as similar to the question that Dali was just asking.
Yeah. The closest I come to attempting to deconvert, I really avoid that in SE. I don't really care. But the closest I get is in reviewing their epistemologies, in reviewing their core reasons. If we come to recognize one of those reasons as a flat-out fallacy, a flat-out bad reason, not just a gut reason, but a really bad reason, broken clock wrong. Anything that we ever find has that epistemology in it, we will come to doubt in the future. And we might overreact in a bunch of things. So there are very significant potential downfalls to recognizing fallacies in your own thinking. It's a lot like deconverting. I think that's the most powerful danger that I wield in street epistemology.
I think it's important that as we're teaching people about street epistemology, or we're going through these conversations, that we do have an understanding that there are biases that we all have. We have our own cognitive biases, and the people we talk to have their own cognitive biases. And the more we understand those biases, the more we can identify those biases if we're looking at, a hierarchy of what their beliefs are, their reasons are. And then we can see where does it make sense to put a shim in, because there's something that the more we understand, the more we can find where to put the shim in to discuss it deeper. That makes sense.
Yep.
Today says there are reasons to help people out of abusive situations. Yes, there are a lot of situations that SE might have somebody making changes in their life, and I think on average they're positive. And there's a few situations where the cost and the benefit aren't positive. And I'm not necessarily going to know what those are.
Yep. All right. Do we want to move on to the next set of clips?
Sure.
Or any other thoughts on that? Okay. So with this one, Reid was asking for innovations. I don't know if this is an innovation. Well, it's not something I've seen anybody do, but it's something I thought of. And it's kind of, Reid, you were talking earlier about how when you ask that question, the valuing truth question, that can set up a cognitive dissonance kind of thing. And that's similar. What I'm doing here is actually a very similar thing. I set it up properly. I come back to it properly. And then you'll see how I, in my opinion, kind of botch it. So, it's both an innovation and a mistake.
Great for review.
All right, so I'm gonna do something a little bit different. I haven't tried this before, but I'm gonna ask a couple of kind of introductory questions before we get into like kind of the, what's your confidence and where does it come from kind of questions like I did with Tamaya.
Okay.
So first of all, what do you think about being open-minded? Do you think being open-minded is good or bad, or what are your thoughts on open-mindedness?
I think it's good. I think it has its place, right? I don't think we should be put into a box and keep our mind closed over one thing. I think it's good to explore all things.
Okay.
To kind of find, I believe works for you. I think everybody has. I don't think it's one shoe fits all in life, in my opinion.
Okay.
Even with religion, I think there's some things that work for other people that don't work for others. And
Gotcha.
so I'm not here. I really don't fault people for whatever they believe. I just believe how I believe, but yeah.
Okay. And then question number 2 then, would you consider yourself to be an open-minded person?
Absolutely.
All right, cool. All right. So we've kind of established this belief, right? We're going to explore this claim that Jesus Christ rose from the dead, right? And then that somehow offers salvation, I think you said, right? This is going to, don't get... Okay, so that's an introductory thing. Thoughts on asking those questions?
It's priming. You're priming them to consider the value of open-mindedness, along with the warning that open-mindedness could be too much. And so you're getting them already thinking in terms of, okay, open-mindedness is good and should be limited. And now let's focus back on the claim. I don't think the answers to the questions were the point. I think the question in the priming was the point in this case. Am I correct? I don't know what your intention was.
Yeah. Asking those questions and the way that I asked them is exactly what you're talking about. And I struggled with the ethics of it. But I know that's something that they, like when I studied psychology and when I was a psychology test subject as a freshman in Psych 115 or Psych 120, whatever class that was, there were these kind of questions and they were all about, priming somebody in a certain way. And so I'm worried a little about the ethics of it. I gave it a shot. I don't think it's really a bad thing to try to encourage somebody to be open-minded. So I hope it's okay. But I know that what I'm doing is kind of it's kind of like a little psychological trick. Like, hey, what do you think about being open-minded? You think it's good? Do you consider yourself to be an open-minded person? Okay, well, and hopefully that puts them into, I'm just hoping that it kind of puts them into that headspace of being willing to consider alternatives. That's all I'm really looking for is if they've got defenses up, I hope it lowers them a little bit.
I think all of the language is manipulation no matter what. So, but oftentimes people, when they say manipulation, they mean covert manipulation, and they're excluding overt manipulation. I think in this case, the question is so overt, the priming is so overt as to avoid any sort of pitfalls because it's covert. I think. I think it's just really obvious that I'm asking questions to get you in the right mindset about what the answers are and how that's going to frame the next questions.
You could also, to deal with ethics, be more open about your goals. Part of SE is helping people encourage reflection on the quality of their reasoning for the purpose of helping people become better critical thinkers, being open-minded, being curious, having this epistemic humility mindset is a goal you have to spread to other people in the world as a persuasion goal. So I like to be out in the park and help people be persuaded to adopt these good attitudes in their lives so that they can live better lives, myself and others. That's the point. That's true. That's the goal. You can just tell them that if you think it's ethically murky. Feel free to just be honest about it.
Okay.
Yeah, I've gotten pushback on that word persuasion, and what it's caused in me is a willingness to sort of double down, admit it, and call myself on it. Yes, I'm attempting to persuade toward critical thinking, and I'll try not to persuade on anything else.
Right.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. Well, I'm glad that you guys aren't, shaming me for like an ethical violation or whatever. I was honestly a little worried about, is it okay to do this or not? But
if you think about it from an educational standpoint, if you are saying it as I'm going to ask these questions, and here's the reason why I'm going to ask them. A lot of times when I have conversations, I'll explain what I'm doing and why I'm doing it, because I'm explaining it to people as if they were going to use it with somebody they know. So when I'm having my conversations, I'll do it that way. So
I try to do that whenever I remember to.
Yeah.
I'm going to ask some questions to do this. I'm going to ask some questions to do that. Yeah. I love doing that. I'm right there with you, Kevin. Very much an advocate for doing that.
And the new report module is coming out soon to be tested externally. And that technique is called explaining as you go, getting those goals out in the open. Yeah.
Cool.
Get offended.
You good.
I might not ask this very well. This is a challenging question. I'm going to push back a little bit.
You good.
Yeah, don't get offended. That's also not the right way to say it. I don't mean to offend, maybe be a better way. Just don't get offended, okay? Just don't. Just if you start feeling offended, don't. Just don't do it.
I think he understood it as what I'm going to say could be offensive. Please cut me slack.
Right, that's what I meant. He knew what I was getting at.
I think that's how he got it.
Very poorly worded.
Good.
So earlier you did talk about how you think it's important to be open-minded, right?
Right.
And you think of yourself as an open-minded person. And you also said you want 100% of your beliefs to be true or to be accurate, right?
Right.
But you also say that you're at 100% confidence that this belief is true. Now, this could just be me misinterpreting what 100% means, so please correct me if I'm wrong. But when I think of 100%, I think of there's no way I could possibly be wrong. I can't think of anything that would change my mind.
Right.
So if you're at 100%, are you actually open-minded about this?
Well,
right.
Yeah.
Mm.
I probably would have asked him about what he means by 100% rather than trying to explain it to him first. Yeah.
Yeah. Good. Yeah.
He starts to answer.
I felt
go ahead,
5
Dali.
times in which the tension increased, and then the snap with the rubber band was quite profound. This is not bad. This is just wow.
He was going to answer the question.
Yeah.
As I laid it out, and then for some reason I further explained the question. I just stopped and talked over him and further explained the question. I'm like, as I watched it back, I was like, oh, you idiot. You had it. You did the thing at the beginning. You did the psychological priming. You got a contradiction. You're following up on it. Let him think. I was so mad at myself. Next time.
But was the result good?
The result was still good, but I think it would have been so much better if I would have just let him say what he was thinking.
If it went well, that's his fault.
Yeah. So we watched the rest of it or whatever.
Yeah, you didn't mess up very much, but to the degree you messed up and the result was good, it was his fault, not yours. It's his fault that it came out well.
Oh, okay, gotcha. The credit goes to him.
This is the IL's gracefulness. Go for it. Keep going.
To compare, right? Tamaya said 99%, right? Your daughter? Right? So to me, it sounds like Tamaya she's a little bit more, maybe a 1% more open-minded than you are.
Right.
Is that fair or is that totally wrong?
That's playful teasing. That's using humor.
Yeah. Spending a little rapport, maybe, but
that's fine.
It was it was really good. He had a great attitude. He had just watched, for context, he had just watched me interview his daughter. And when that one wrapped up, he was like, "Oh man, this is great. This is so cool. This is dope." Like, he was real excited. He was all in on it. Like, thought it was just awesome. So I knew I, could push a little harder, but I wish I would have just shut up and let him think.
This commentary is by watching the entire series that relates to both he and his daughter, and my feedback is, wow, such good facilitation of honest, reflective communication within a family where that's hard. That's the hardest. And for an outsider to be able to bring in and bring them together and let them confront and be graceful, and it's okay, and oh, you're 1%, but you're on your scale, and you're this, and it's all good. It's because you're facilitating the communication. It's not about what result they get to. Beautiful, just beautiful. I want to see more.
Thanks, Dali.
Well, that's one way. If people know your position, and and they know all about what you're trying to do with your goals. Yeah. Speaking of Pine Creek, you want to set that up, Nate?
Yeah, sure. I was just looking for some more clips because I'd provided a few, and I thought we might need a few more. And I was searching through, and I know Pine Creek has little snippets he sometimes cuts out, and this was one of them where it's it's similar to a confidence scale, but it's not a confidence scale question. And so it's just another way to ask the question. And we can watch the whole clip, or we can just watch the part where he asks the question, and we can discuss that. But
the whole clip's entertaining.
I like looking at the different ways that people will get to the same place, and how you can ask questions so many different ways, phrase them differently, set up different hypotheticals. And so this is a fun one, I think. So
go ahead.
Okay, how about this? What if the Shroud of Turin is real? That would be contemporary evidence.
It would be of what? Careful
Of
now.
something awkwardly happening to a body that's wrapped in a shroud.
Okay, I'll grant you that. But unfortunately, we radiocarbon date that, and it's not from the 1st century. Let's say we could take the Shroud of Turin. Let's say you and I actually had it in our possession. And let's say we found 5 universities around the world to radiocarbon date it again. And not just one corner, random spots all over.
Yeah.
And at different depths. Okay?
Yes.
How much of your net worth would you be willing to bet that all 5, or let's say even 4 of the 5, will come out to the 1st century?
Yeah, so it's a fun question.
Oh yeah. I first heard that one from my friend Flash from Canada, where he was taking the confidence and pushing it into bets and odds and how much willingness to bet. And I don't know if Pine Creek originated or if he pulled whatever, but I love that. I love that thing because it really makes it tangible. Wait a minute, real money. Oh, wait, now I have to evaluate something where I usually bring more options in other than this other way. Ooh.
Yeah, instead of just putting a number on it, it really makes it oh, I'm you got skin in the game on this claim now, right?
Yeah, you're only one step from actually having to ante up. Seriously, the next step is you'll either ante up or you'll have to back down to not ante up. Oof.
Yeah. Now, one thing I think it's fun. I think it's a different way to ask the question, and sometimes it's just fun to do things slightly differently. I do worry a little bit about how much somebody's personality comes in it, though, because I am allergic to gambling. So for me, I'm I'm not $5, $10, It's like a very different, perspective as opposed to somebody who's, plays poker all the time, like Doug does.
Yeah.
It's just a little bit different confidence scale.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It reminds me of this book, Thinking in Bets. I haven't read it, but the basic principle is exactly that. Yeah.
If you only have a small amount of information, what's your optimum solution? Yeah, it's if you take it far enough, it's the iterated prisoner's dilemma for people who want to research that kind of thing, where you hide absolutely as much information from the participants as possible, and then figure out what's the best strategy from then. And that's one edge of strategy. It's useful to know that one, but makes reciprocity good. But it also sort of convinces you that maybe reciprocity is only useful in maximum blindness, and that the more information you have, the less reciprocity is socially positive. Sorry if I'm going too deep down a rabbit hole.
That's fine. Oh boy. Okay.
Nice. Should we watch the rest? I think that's the main point you wanted to get out.
That was the main point, but yeah, we can watch the rest of it. Might as well,
if you want.
If I
don't have anything else.
If I trusted the labs, yes.
Okay.
I don't completely trust carbon dating.
Well, okay, now we're to the point where if there's would you trust it if all 5 of them said it was first century?
Probably. Because
this was the result you want. So you would change your mind if we ran this.
Yeah, of course.
Okay, perfect. So now all we have to do, isn't it curious to you that the Roman Catholics or whoever own it won't allow that? Isn't it curious?
I mean, I wish they would.
Like, people keep poo-pooing that conspiracy theories don't happen, but this is a conspiracy theory where the leaders who own this shroud, whoever owns it, are conspiring against the world to have this idea that this is from the first century, when they can very easily change many people's minds, including you, by just giving up the shroud to be tested in various spots at various depths. And even if it just one result came to the first century, that would give some Christians hope. But I'm saying you're going to get all of the carbon testing being in that 13th, 14th century range, whatever it was.
Yeah, I think the issue for them is that they have nothing to lose. So in other words, they are accruing.
They have nothing to gain.
Yeah. Okay.
And everything to lose.
Yeah. Exactly.
Like, who's going to come look at the shroud if they actually do this?
Dali.
Oh, where he says nothing to gain, nothing to lose. Yeah, the guy just the cognitive dissonance just snapped for his IL right there. I got to count on several fingers the messaging and the violation of my normal SE rules so far, and just say that Pine Creek's doing his own version of SE, and he's not calling it SE, and it works in his context, and people know what they're getting into when they jump in with him. So he gets a pass on that side. Please continue.
And it ends up being a 14th century.
And they're making money off of it. I mean, they're established. I mean, I get that concept. I mean, it's religions, unfortunately, is a big business, maybe one of the biggest businesses. So I understand the negativity and the dubious nature.
But this is also,
I understand why an atheist would think
this is also hypocrisy, because Christians are supposed to be the ones who value truth the most because they have the truth. Jesus is the truth. And if Christians and Christianity want to not look like hypocrites, they should give up the shroud to the whole world to be tested. And then people can finally shut up about it.
Talking about putting on the pressure of valuing truth and putting that pressure there of the cognitive dissonance. I mean,
messaging up to 11.
I would say that SC without a challenge, without challenging, is platforming, and he goes to the far side of this, where he is really. I would rather see this than somebody doing SE that doesn't challenge, right? I think this is a little bit far, maybe, but that's my opinion on that. That's my claim, I guess.
It would be far with a random person in this park, but people should know what they're getting into when they click the call in to him. And
the context is
know
very
all the
different.
biases. So it's a different context, but yeah.
I'd so like to see a Kevin score, especially on like a lot of my old conversations, to see on which side of your optimum I am and how far. I would love that feedback. I'm being genuine. This isn't no joking. Public or private, whatever. If you could somehow give me the Kevin score.
Yeah, you give me a couple of videos to watch, and I'll give you the Kevin score.
Thank you.
Yeah. It's interesting to think about, because I've definitely had some interviews where, for one reason or another, I really don't push back much. Sometimes it's just that the claim they're bringing is something that I sometimes will still ask some of the SE questions, but sometimes I'm like, yeah, you know what? We really should respect everybody's sexual preferences. I don't really I don't really want to challenge you on that one. Like that's, I mean, I still ask some of the questions, but I didn't even call that one SE when I released that one. I was like, this wasn't.
Are there no sexual preferences that you don't find troublesome, difficult, and degrading to humanity?
Oh, okay. Yeah, there probably are some examples.
Oh, okay.
I'm not sure if that was what he was.
Especially that
at,
one.
But yeah.
I just needed to get the Kevin score.
Yeah.
Oh, shoot.
Nice. Well, this is fun. We should do clips more often. That was good.
Thank you. I'm going to send you a playlist, Kevin. Thank you.
Yeah, please do.
You volunteered. Now you're up for at least 2 hours.
Oh, yeah, that's nothing. I do a lot of hours on YouTube, so bring it on.
Yeah, I want to give a plug to David and Veronica's SE tour, national tour they're doing right now. I think they started in Washington. They're starting to drive around and just help people practice SE out in the park and record and show them the ropes. And get in touch with David and Veronica's Sound Epistemology on the SE Discord channel. They have a whole channel about it. What is it? Yeah, a message channel. Yeah,
really cool.
Most of the people I've seen start SE had their first conversations in partnership with somebody experienced. Only a very, very few, I can name them on one hand, do I know started on their own. Like Reid, Mark, Anthony. Let's see.
Well, Mark did it with us on video. That was the main.
Mark did it before he met us. He just did it on audio. And what he was doing definitely counted.
True.
Yeah,
I only got started once Mark started doing those new creator meetings. That's what got me started.
Exactly, and that's what we found is that partnership of if you actually go do it even just a few times with somebody experienced, that is the best way to actually doing it on your own when you want to, or deciding that you want to, or something like that. Whatever.
Yeah. Here's a comment from Addison396. SE for me in some circumstances can solely be about me understanding the interlocutor and their reason for their belief or claim. And I can sometimes understand a claim without challenging it. That's definitely one of my primary goals whenever I'm doing SE.
Yeah.
And I would say usually too, if we're not challenging it, it's because we believe it and we find it hard to challenge our own beliefs as part of it.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I agree. I think that's a pitfall. I think if I agree with you, I should be able to challenge it at least to the degree of at least one of us will have a novel thought about the thing in this conversation. And if I've understood you completely and at least one of us has a novel thought, that's my major goals are done. Thank you. I'm happy. I didn't have to challenge it further than that, as long as we can get some new thinking.
Devil's advocate.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, you should still be able to hopefully ask some of the good thing is there are kind of some standard questions that you can go through where, when I was first starting out, my go-to questions were just, what could move you up? What could move you down? If nothing else, if you can ask those questions, you can at least uncover a little bit about what their epistemology is and, what sort of data they're valuing, and that can be valuable.
Yep.
Let's see.
Awesome.
And it's so not for everybody. This is a weird kind of extrovert thing that strangely I find introverts doing. So there's even weirdness there. But this is such an odd extrovert thing, and we don't need everybody to do it. We'd like everybody to be RILs though, because we need lots of IL.
Yep. Cool.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Nick, for making the clips, and we'll be back probably next weekend with another maybe set of clips, maybe a whole video. Who knows?
Cool.
Well,
Looking forward to it.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely.
Everybody stay
cool.
on.
This was fun. Cool idea, Reid.
Thank you. See you next week.
Good night. Bye.